I'm here at Air Force Station Adampur, and with me is a very special guest, the Indian Air Force Chief. Sir, welcome to WION. It's pleasure to have you on WION and have a conversation. But let me start with your sortie first. We saw those very dynamic and kinetic visual, to use the phrase. Essentially, the significance, if you can talk about the sortie which took place.
Essentially, it's a good idea every time to come down to the field level to see, witness for oneself the level of training, the kind of exercises that are undertaken by the pilots these days. And you must have seen that it was a fairly large formation exercise that we undertook today. So it gave me a first-hand experience of the kind of tactics that are being followed, the level of training, the standard of training, and everything else that goes with it. So it's a good idea to get a first-hand experience myself on what's happening at the field level.
Now let me start with the other elements. Let me start with the role of the Indian Air Force, particularly when it comes to the humanitarian exercises, where the Indian Air Force has been very active. We saw the Indian Air Force's role when it comes to the Turkey earthquake and also South Sudan, how Indian Air Force played a crucial role in bringing the Indians back. If you can talk about how risk-prone are these operations, and if you can give other details as well.
See, Indian Air Force has always been the first responder for any such crisis across the globe, particularly in the near vicinity of our country. And in the past many years, we have actually developed our skill level and training level to execute such missions with a fair amount of confidence. Like these few missions that you mentioned, the extrication of our diaspora from South Sudan or even from Kabul back in 21, these were all missions that were fraught with a lot of uncertainties and some level of, even a danger, I may use that word. But our trained aircrew, our trained commando forces which went along with these aircraft ensured that the missions were executed flawlessly. It required a lot of teamwork, a lot of pre-preparation and training. And this is precisely what we go through on a daily basis in the Air Force. So we are always honing the skills, preparing for such conditions that may arise anywhere across the globe. Recently, just a few weeks ago, you are aware that along with the Indian Navy, we carried out an operation of dropping the speedboats from an C-17 aircraft, almost 2,500 kilometers from our coastline, on which the Indian Navy Marcos embarked and carried out their anti-piracy operation. So the kind of roles and missions that we are expected to do can be very, very varied. But let me tell you with a lot of confidence that I think we are capable of pulling off anything that comes our way.
So I'm looking at some kind of anecdote perhaps from these operations. I would specifically ask on the Kabul operation, which happened in 2021. It had a lot of risks and airspace also closed. If you can talk about any detail which perhaps we do not know how dangerous this particular operation was.
See, that was a time when there was no air traffic control over Kabul. The entire airspace was, as they call, uncontrolled airspace. So what we had to do is we had to launch an aircraft which could take the role of an airborne air traffic control. And mind you, there were aircraft from other nationalities also taking part in similar operations at the same time. There was no ground control at that time. So we had to land our special forces first, who secured the area around the aircraft, while there was one aircraft remaining in the air carrying out, like I said, air traffic controlling duties. And we managed to put in as many of our Indian nationals as we could in each of these aeroplanes. And one of the interesting sorties was where they took off in absolute pitch darkness using night vision goggles in an uncontrolled airspace. So I think that is the pinnacle of what you would call transport operations.
Are we planning to increase our zone? Because over the past few years, we have seen the zone being increased from Kabul to South Sudan to so far towards the Mediterranean. So is it the expansion of the Indian Air Force's capability to far from places in terms of humanitarian disasters reaching out at that time?
The reach provided by the strategic airlift aircraft and even the aircraft like the C-130 allows us to respond to a situation like this probably anywhere across the globe. So it is only the requirement as may arise anytime across the globe, whether it is for providing supplies during any humanitarian disaster situation, or whether it is rescuing our or evacuating our diaspora from anywhere across the globe. I think we have the wherewithal, the capability, and the training to carry out such missions.
So moving now to the region, how do you see the situation in the Indo Pacific? There are increased signs of worry, which we all have seen. Just underestimating by putting those terms. So, how do you see the situation in the Indo Pacific?
The center of gravity, like they said, is now the Indo Pacific region for all the militaries to keep our focus on. And we are keeping a close watch on all the developments there. We have collaborating with our friendly foreign air forces, with whom we carry out exercises quite regularly, and interacting with them, we are quite clear of how they are going to tackle the situation in anything that may arise in that region. And we are also fully prepared to join hands with them if necessary.
And how do you assess the current situation when it comes to India's northern border, sir? How is the Indian Air Force prepared to deal with that as well?
We are always prepared. We will remain prepared. We will handle any situation that may arise based on the circumstances that come up at that time. But let me assure you that we are always ready to take on any situation.
Any lessons from the situation that has emerged in last 2 or 3 years?
Our initial issue was with sustaining and maintaining our forces at high altitudes in the eastern Ladakh in particular, because you are aware that the Air Force was never equipped or trained to operate for sustained periods there. So the first challenge was to deploy our units at those altitudes, and thereafter now keep them going there for such a long period. So with good help from and administrative support from the Indian Army and the ITBP, I think we are now quite well settled, I would say, in those high altitude regions.
And moving towards the western border as well, how much is the worry there, and how are we geared to deal with any crisis?
I think suffice it to say that we are always prepared. If any new development takes place, we will redeploy as required. We will relook at our deployment policies and the way we conduct our operations. So we will always respond to any situation appropriately.
And the two-front challenge?
Even that we will respond to appropriately.
Now let's go to the bilateral aspects of the Indian Air Force's engagement with partner countries, like-minded countries. Let me start with Russia first. How has the engagement with the Russians, and we have number of Russian assets as well. Has the Russia-Ukraine conflict increased concerns over their repair?
See, we have a large inventory of Russian equipment, hardware, both aircraft, radars, surface-to-air guided weapons, and so on. And to a large extent, yes, we are still dependent on supplies of spares from this country. But over the years, having learned to operate with these fleets, we have indigenized a whole lot of components and spares within the country. When it comes to the aircraft fleet, for example, the Sukhoi 30 itself is being manufactured under license by Hindustan Aeronautics. The engines are being manufactured under license. So the reliability on a whole lot of components has definitely reduced over the years.
So the conflict hasn't had much impact on the Indian Air Force's capabilities. Is it correct to say so?
Not really a major impact. Of course, there are some critical components for which we are still dependent on them, but it is not a situation that I would be alarmed about.
Any lessons? I have been asking a lot of lessons, but any lessons from the conflict that has happened in Europe?
Very much, at all levels. If I start at the strategic level, I think the first lesson is the requirement to be self-sufficient in arms manufacturing, production, and sustenance. We cannot continuously rely on somebody else to provide us arms and ammunition. So that's the first lesson. The second major lesson, of course, will be at the operational level. where the requirement of maintaining some degree of control of the air, or what they call air superiority or air supremacy, has come out loud and clear. Alongside that is, of course, the air defense measures that are required. You see the plethora of objects that need to be defended against, starting from small drones to hypersonic weapons like the Kinzhal missile and so on. So we need to have a robust air defense network that can actually counter all the threats which are present and which are emerging in future. At the tactical level, of course, we keep studying what are the lessons, and we keep honing our skills based on some of the lessons learned, keeping in mind that some of them may necessarily not be applicable in our area. They may be more relevant to that area of operations.
But overall, with Russia, how do you see the relationship in terms of the Air Force level?
I think we do not have we have not carried out too many exercises with the Russian Air Force, but it's more with the Russian industry to sustain our equipment. And that, I suppose, will continue for some time as long as we keep maintaining this equipment.
Moving to United States, there have been multiple exercises which have been happening. If you can talk about that, how do you see this exercise going forward?
I think the engagement with the United States Air Force has been growing steadily over the years. We had taken part initially in a series of exercises that are called COPE India, where the United States Air Force used to come to India and operate alongside us. We sent our Air Force to the United States for the exercise Red Flag on some occasions.
Okay.
And going through this, along with some other engagements in the multilateral exercises done in some other countries, we have now reached a fairly high level of confidence of operating very easily alongside the United States Air Force. So when it comes to understanding each other's tactics, understanding the methods of operation and so on, I think we have reached a high level of comfort.
Make in India is another flagship program of the government. How is it taking off for the Indian Air Force? And Tejas has been one example of it. How many countries, I know it's not exactly in your domain, but how much has been the enthusiasm in other forces for Tejas?
I think the best way to propagate the qualities of the Tejas is to take it outside to the world and show it in air displays and make it a part of the exercises that we do with other air forces. So like they say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So we have actually now started carrying out displays of the Tejas at various air shows, and across the world, many countries, many air forces have really started showing interest in this really small and potent platform.
There was a crash, unfortunate crash which took place. What do you have to say about that? Are you worried about that?
The court of inquiry is still in progress. To establish the cause, it takes some time to put everything together, to piece all the the evidences that are available. I will be able to comment on this only after when I get to see the inquiry.
So moving to, I know time is running out, but other parts of the world as well. West Asia has emerged as one of the key partners of India. We held exercises with UAE as well, trilateral exercises. If you can perhaps give a brief overview about Indian Air Force's engagement with the countries of the West Asian region and any future exercises which are being planned?
Yes, we are engaging regularly, firstly with the UAE Air Force. We have conducted exercises called Desert Night. We also have been doing exercises over the Arabian Sea along with the United Arab Emirates Air Forces. We engage with the Air Force of Oman through an exercise called Eastern Bridge. Along with that, we also engaged with the Egyptian Air Force in exercise Bright Star just last year. You may be aware that we are going to conduct a multilateral exercise in the later part of this year, Tarang Shakti. All these air forces will be taking part in this forthcoming exercise.
And with middle powers like France and Australia, what kind of engagement we are looking at?
Once again, we have annual exercises with these countries. With the French, we have done 2 exercises last year. This year again, they are coming in for the exercise in India. With the Australians, we are going out to their multilateral exercise called Pitch Black, again sometime in the month of August. So our engagements with these air forces will continue.
So you initially gave an example of the humanitarian support by giving an example of what happened in the western part of the Indian Ocean, the MV Ruin case, where the Indian Air Force played a crucial role. Now, how do you see the Indian Air Force's role in terms of piracy operations? And perhaps my second question is linked to it. How do you see jointness as well? Because it is a perfect example of jointness. What's your view about that as well?
Yeah, so joint planning and execution of such missions is going to remain crucial to success of any operation in future, and I think we are adequately prepared to carry out joint planning of any such mission in future along with the Indian Navy.
And situation in the western part of the Indian Ocean, how do you see it as, and do you see more involvement of the Indian Air Force?
Wherever the Indian Navy calls upon us to carry out a joint mission, we will always be there.
On that note, thank you so much, sir, for speaking to WION. I know you were short of time and the ongoing exercises are also taking place, but lovely speaking to you here in Punjab, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Pleasure.
Thank you,
Thank you,
so much,
Siddhant.